Thank you for being with us tonight. This meeting has been brought to you in part by
Let Grand Forks International Airport help you start your next vacation off on the right foot. Grand Forks International Airport offers flights to the sunny destinations of Orlando, Las Vegas, and Phoenix on Allegiant, and connections anywhere in the world through Minneapolis-St. Paul on Delta. Forget the hassle of long drives, parking nightmares, and stressful check-ins. The convenience of flying locally means less headaches and more time for you. Grand Forks International Airport, your airport, simply grand.
How many things in your house connect to the internet? Let's see. Computers, smartphones, gaming console, maybe your appliances and lights. They say that by the year 2020, the average home will have 5 devices for every one person. I don't know about you guys, but I don't want to be average. We're going to need much better internet.
Midco Extreme Gig is here. Life-changing.
Know what's in this box? Well, in case your crystal ball is broken, here's a hint. Safe, reliable energy, for starters, but there's also a commitment to this community. See, at Xcel Energy, this is our hometown. So we're not just about making a living here, we're about living here. Oh, I wish I had wings.
In our community, we're always delivering. Xcel Energy, responsible by nature.
As a farm kid from North Dakota, I was raised to face challenges head-on. But that was put to the test when I was diagnosed with cancer as a teenager. Now, I'm determined to help kids overcome obstacles like this. So I started my journey at the University of North Dakota. With hard work and determination, I'll help others and others help me. I'm making my impact. How will you make yours?
Oh yeah, that's not sales. And then the tax is basically so it will effectively help you tax as if it's still an empty lot until 2024.
City of Grand Forks, the proud home of the University of North Dakota, and the Grand Forks Air Force Base City Council meeting Monday, June 17, 2019 is hereby called to order. Welcome and roll call.
Weigel. Here. Doppler. Here. Weber. Here. Mock. Here. Marshall. Here. Sandy. Veen. Here. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Under Mayor's announcements tonight, I'd like to congratulate and thank the Public Works for your yard waste recycling efforts. I mean, it's tremendous to see over the weekend that people are utilizing that and they're taking care of it, and I appreciate the work that they're doing. Also, it's summer, so be aware that children are out on bicycles, so drive safely and be aware of your surroundings. And Cheap Trick tonight at the Alara Center at 8 o'clock, I believe, so you still have time after the council meeting to grab a bite and go to the Alara Center and support that. Item 2, awards, presentations, appointments, and proclamations, 2.1.
Update on wastewater treatment plant UV disinfection project.
Ms. Parvey, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. Tonight I'm just going to provide you with a brief update, a really brief update on the disinfection project that we've almost completed at the wastewater treatment plant. So just a little bit of history, why we did the project. The plant had seen increasing wastewater flows, and then we have biosolids in one of our lagoons, and that was impacting our capacity. So we've been talking about disinfection for some time, actually since the plant was, the project was planned. The city also determined that we needed something more for our NDPDS permit requirements that we have to meet. So in 2016, we really started looking at a preliminary study, and then we came back later that year and recommended UV disinfection. There's different types of disinfection, and then a gravity pipeline. So within that whole project, there was a couple of different recommendations. One was actually to retrofit the MBF, basin number 8. And that's because we would have had to build a separate building to actually put this system in, and we were able to utilize this for the project. We selected a 54-inch RCP pipe, and then the location that it'll connect to the existing outlet, and I'll show a map of that. And then we had to do improvements in the other MBF area, and that was alternate one of our project, in order to bring it up to the electrical codes and make it fire resistant. We also have been talking about for the last few years about decommissioning lagoons. We're very, very close to the airport, and you've heard our work on wildlife mitigation out there, so that's also in the plan. Right now we're planning to dewater those lagoons, the secondary cell 1 and secondary cell 4, and then we'll decommission them at a later date. Another component of that was incorporating a pond water return pump, and that allows us to actually pump water from the lagoons into the headworks and treat that way. The disinfection then allows us to discharge directly to the river. So our project schedule, last year, if you remember, we brought before you the bids for the project, and we awarded that in June. We were able to give them a notice of award at the end of June, and then we scheduled pre-con meetings with the contractor, and they began work at the end of July. We were able to discharge the second week in April of this year, and then we anticipate project completion around July 1st, although we do have one more change order that we're contemplating with them for work that needs to be done. So that could take the extension of the project to August or a little bit later. This project budget is around $9 million. We did have the complete construction for about $7.6 million. And like I said, that includes that alternate one where we were able to do improvements within the MBF area right next to the project, and then change orders that were included. We decided that it was important to have an influent water quality station, which wasn't initially included in the project, for us to better manage our process. The engineering services was included in this as well. This is all the costs totaling for the project from back in 2016 when we were looking at options for what to do with the project, 30%, 60% design, full design bidding, surveying, the INC work that we need to do with it, and construction oversight, and then post-construction as well. Here's our project site. The wastewater treatment plant's kind of the really small component in the middle. The airport's off to the left, and the lagoons, which are about 1,300 acres, are right above that. This map is actually one that we showed you back in 2016, and highlights the green hatched markings are the lagoons itself, and that blue line is the new RCP pipe that we put in to connect to the existing outfall that goes to the Red River. So this is the MBF area where we actually did the retrofit. This is that area now with the UV disinfection Trojan system that's installed there. This is training of the staff that we've had. We had it initially when we began work in April, and then just in May again we met. So this is the system, the UV disinfection system that acts directly like sunlight for our disinfection for our project. And we've got 2 trains that are needed to do what we do for capacity.
Well, thank you. Any questions? Everything looks clean and new.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Oh, under Mayor's announcements, I need to say the farmers market in front of City Hall went very well. And World Refugee Day had a delightful program, and I want to thank Cynthia Shab, Robin David, and Reggie Tar for everything they did to make that a great program. Next, we have employee recognition, 2.2. And we have Doug Stern, 30 years with the fire department. Nicole Survey, 20 years with PSAP. Melanie Parvey, 20 years with water treatment. She started when she was 6. And then we have Delray Hood, 15 years with fire. Darren Johnson, 15 years police. Stacy Furden, 15 years wastewater treatment. Tim Ward, 5 years with assessing. Rick Hychek, 5 years with the police. Jennifer Wolf-Karras, 5 years with the police. Heidi Hildebrand, 5 years PSEP. And Miranda Olson, 5 years with fire. Let's all give them a hand. Public hearings and second readings of ordinances, 3.1.
Public hearing and second reading of ordinance related to UND Sign Overlay District.
I'll open the public hearing. We'll close the public hearing. Council comments, Mr. Vian? Motion, second, Ms. Marshall. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, carries, thank you. Item 4, action items. Who would like action items for discussion? I will pull 4-1, pull 4 and 4-8. Any other items, Ms. Marshall? Ms. Marshall's for 4-3. That leaves 4-2, 4-5, 4-6, 4-7, 4-9, 4-10, 4-11, 4-12, 4-13, 4-14, 4-15, 4-16, and 4-17 for a motion and a second. Mr. Weber motions, Mr. Weigel seconds. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, carries. Thank you. 4.1.
Renaissance Zone Project GF61, the Argyle.
Mr. Phelan.
Mayor Brown, members of City Council, I'm also joined this evening with Matt Torgerson. He's the Director of Development from JLG, so if you have any questions on the Argyle project, Matt can answer any questions. So it's an exciting time that we actually have this project moving forward. This is at a strategic corner of Demers and 4th. It's the empty lot where some building construction materials. So we're really pleased that we're moving forward with this project. And if you recall back a few years ago, we had a bit of a 4 projects that we wanted to move forward with as part of our initial downtown action planning. Number 1 was Selkirk on 4th. That was otherwise known as the Arbor condos that are moving forward. Number 2 was the Demers Avenue reconstruction that we're moving forward with. Number 3 was Pure Development, or otherwise known as the Hugo's Mixed Use Building. And then finally, the Argyle, or what we used to refer to as the JLG lot that we're moving forward with redevelopment. So those are really 4 critical projects, capped off with 4. And we thought if we could get these going here in the first 2 years, it would lead to more good things happening. For example, with the water treatment plant redevelopment, as we look at that, probably 2 years from now. But these early out projects would demonstrate all the great things that are going on downtown, would create life, would create investment, would create energy. And so when we brought back projects that are even going to be larger and more significant, that we'd have a demonstration of all the great things. And sometimes in this community and in other communities, seeing is believing. And so that's what we really wanted. So it's really exciting that we're in front of you with this project. It is a mixed use building, first floor. They've talked a lot about trying to animate street life, and so the concept is to have a restaurant, bar, some sort of retail on the first floor that brings people in and out. Second floor would be the JLG offices, and 3 through 5 are a mix of apartments in this particular building. The building will have a basement, will not have underground parking just because of how it's situated. It's locked in between buildings. It will need parking, and so its primary parking will be parking ramps, whether that's the corporate center ramp or the center ramp, but that's where the parking will be. There's a paragraph or a few sentences that talk about this project does not need a skyway to the corporate center ramp, but there is a kind of an area that's not interconnected at this point. I think, just so you know, this project is independent of that discussion, but if we do bring back a public-private partnership to move forward with that, with the connecting buildings, this would be one of the buildings we'd want to connect, just because it has housing, it has business, and then it has kind of a retail component. So more to come on that. It doesn't need it at this point in time. Matt will say that, but just so you're not surprised if we try to find a solution with all the other private sector developers, we're at least taking a look and see how that would pencil out with a contribution from us, along with contribution from the private developers. With that, it's an exciting time to move this project forward. Matt's here on behalf of the development company to answer any questions, but that's all that I have, Mayor.
Thank you. So council comments on 4.1. Mr. Weber, do you have any questions for?
Go ahead.
Anything you'd like to share with us? Anything you'd like to share about the project?
Nothing other than we're really excited to finally be at the point that we'd like to try to move it forward. And we're really excited about engaging that part of downtown, pretty prominent vacant site, and pretty excited about getting it moving.
Groundbreaking?
We'd hope for next year sometime. Yeah. Got some drawings to do still.
It'd be great to start this year.
Yeah, well, it would be. Yeah, and honestly, if we could start this fall, we would. Yeah. And in the application, I think it indicates this fall. So fingers crossed, we'll do that. Yeah.
Motion to approve. Motion, do you have a second? Mr. Vian, further questions or comments from council? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks,
And then I was remiss under mayor's announcements and employee recognition. I'm proud to start with exciting news that Tiffany Bluesbug of Public Health has been recognized by the North Dakota Public Health Association as the Public Health Worker of the Year. Tiffany runs the Women's Way program, promoting and supporting cancer screening. Congrats and thank you for making us proud and having such an impact on local health. So thank you, congratulations to Tiffany. And then next we go to 4.3.
Request from RE Arena Incorporated for amendment to their Class 8.3 alcoholic beverage license.
Okay, I would just like to speak to that again. We've had a lot of discussion on this topic, both back in last month and then again last week. And I think it's fair to say that there's some mixed feelings amongst the council members about approving this ordinance. And I've also been contacted by a couple different people with concerns about the ordinance. So before we would just blanketly approve it, I would like to give the opportunity for some further discussion on this. I think that there are two concerns that I've been approached with. One has to do with the concern that we spoke of last week, and that's bringing alcohol into events that are primarily kids sporting events, and particularly knowing that the Icon sponsors youth hockey and some concerns about that. The other concern that has been raised is about the potential competition with the bars in the area. I understand that has been discussed at length as well too, and there are thoughts on both sides of that issue. I know we have a bar owner in the audience, and I don't know if Mr. Noreen is prepared to speak to this, but I'd like to give you the opportunity if you are.
Yes. So welcome, and please state your name for the record.
My name is Casey Noreen. I own Kelly's Bar downtown. I don't have any grave concerns, but I do think putting the special licenses in competition with the businesses isn't exactly fair. If it's strictly a matter of the Ralph wanting to expand their footprint on UND campus to include the Fritz, which I've talked with Mr. Hodgkins in the past, and they said that they would like to do smaller events, but they're too big. You know, for me or many other businesses in town to staff the Fritz, it's not viable. So I understand why they would want to and where they could do a better job. My concern is the smaller events such as the chamber events. We've done chamber after hours. I know other bars have too. We've also done Grand Forks Youth Hockey fundraisers, things like that. I would be worried that we would be in competition with them and would lose out on that.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Noreen? Thank you.
If I could just add then, I would be interested in us narrowing the scope of this ordinance a little bit. I know we had a lot of discussion last week about the wide open nature of it, and without any further clarification or specification on what types of events could be sponsored and would fall under this ordinance, you know, there wouldn't be any tools for any discretionary decisions regarding what events could be sponsored. What we heard from the Ralph is that the main concern tends to be events that might occur at venues such as the Chester Fritz Auditorium and the Empire Arts Center. So I would like to propose that a change to the ordinance that would be specific to limit it to those two additional off-site locations and not leave it wide open. So I would open that up as, or make that motion if that is something that we're interested in doing.
So we have a motion before us. We have a second, Ms. Doctor. Discussion from council. So this is the motion to amend. And then Mr. Weber.
In addition to the things that you listed, Marshall, I also recall Mr. Swanson describing this as a proliferation of licenses, when in fact we've been trying to rein that in. Mr. Swanson, am I remembering that accurately?
Mr. Swanson.
Mayor Brown, members of council, Mr. Weber, I don't know that I described this particular request in that regard. However, our office has continuously expressed concern to this council about that issue, with minimal or no success. But I don't know that I characterize this as an expansion of a license. They would be able to perform a service that is currently able to be performed by other license holders. So I don't know that I consider an expansion in that regard. It would increase the areas under which either the REA or the Alaris Center could sell alcoholic beverages. Currently, they are both limited to their particular sites. In the case of the REA, that would include their outside areas, it would include their Olympic arena, and it would include the basketball, volleyball facility. In the case of the Alaris, it would include the arena, the ballroom, all of their meeting areas or meeting rooms, and then their outside areas as well. Under this ordinance, either one would be able to go to any other location in the city, provided that it is for a sporting event or entertainment event that they are promoting.
So the current movie nights that are held in Lincoln Park or in University Park, they could potentially set up a beer tent at those?
Assuming that the Park District gave approval for service in the Park District, and assuming that they were promoting it, yes. They would not be allowed, however, to go in there unless they were the promoter of that event.
Ms. Mock or Mr.
So, Mr. Swanson, you worked quite a bit on this language with REA. From what they were telling us, the intent wasn't necessarily to compete with smaller local bars that hold a different license. My understanding is their intent is to promote new events and bring new events and just have more flexibility in the venue. So is there a way to accomplish that with the language? Is it best to go a route where we list out specific venues like this motion would do? Is there qualifying language we could look at adding so that it's very clear that, you know, they aren't competing for, I mean, they said that their intent wasn't to compete to provide alcohol to a wedding or, you know, various different events, but is there a way to expressly let that out in the language?
Mayor Brown, members of council, Ms. Mock, I don't think you could effectively do that. As far as the situation of a wedding, unless that wedding reception occurs at the REA, I don't consider that to be either a sporting event or an entertainment event that they would be promoting. So I don't think that would be an example that they could compete with. Currently, if there's an event at the Empire Arts Center, any licensed alcoholic beverage vendor can apply for Class 11, including an event that might be sponsored or promoted, I forget the word sponsored, or promoted by the REA or the Alaris. That is also true with regard to the Chester Fritz, and we have seen events that have had liquor provided through a Class 11. This request, and under the motion to amend, if approved, would give them the ability to serve under their current license at the Chester Fritz or at the Empire.
Without the Class 11, they just have.
Correct. They would not need a Class 11. They would still need to make an application. They need to identify where they're serving, when, the times, the event, things of that nature. But it would not be a Class 11 application form.
And that's what's reviewed by staff?
They are reviewed administratively.
Okay.
Mr. Weigel.
I guess I just have a couple concerns about Ms. Marshall's motion. I think that if we say you can only be at the Ralph for the Chester Fritz, and they want to host an act at the Empire Arts Center, I think you might be hurting Mr. Noreen's business more than anything, because you have a facility downtown, they're bringing a new event into Grand Forks, and by limiting them to a certain area, 2 buildings, I think you could hurt downtown businesses, people that may come for dinner or a drink that might go out after the fact of that event. You're taking business away from Grand Forks or from the downtown area. Otherwise, I think we've looked at all the negative situations. What if they want to sponsor an event with Puppy Dog Pals and they want to serve booze at this event? I don't foresee that happening. I think we've all looked at what if on all negative stuff. But what if we look at the positives? We have more events coming into Grand Forks. They're putting their money on the line to bring more events to Grand Forks. It benefits hotels, it benefits restaurants, it benefits the citizens and the tax base. I would hate to go so far as to limit them to just 2 spots that they could bring in an entertainment or a sporting event and cut ourselves short with that. I think we should have some trust in the Ralph and the Alerus Center that they're going to do the right thing. And if there's a time where they don't, then I think we address that. But I think limiting business is bad. And with that, I kindly ask Ms. Marshall to withdraw her motion, if she would.
Ms. Marshall?
I would rather see us vote on the motion, and then if it fails to have an alternative motion from someone. I don't know that the inclusion of the Empire Arts Center would hurt the downtown businesses because of the definition of sponsoring an event, and that involves a fair amount of fiscal capacity to be able to sponsor an event. And I guess I would just like, since Mr. Noreen is still in the audience, to see if you have any further thoughts on that particular event center.
Mr. Noreen.
I think by limiting it to the Empire Arts Center and the Chester Fritz, those are established venues that both the Alerus or the Ralph would do well serving. I don't know, if you don't limit it, where do you draw the line, or how do you draw the line? If you don't do it now, like you said, well, we could address it later. That's like trying to put a cat back in the bag. If you limit it now, and I know, like I said, after speaking with Mr. Hodgson and working with him personally, I've catered the events at the Empire for them. Now, they've discussed doing it themselves, and that I figure that's something that I've lost already. I would hate to lose any more ground by anything done at, say, Blues on the Red, or say if something's done at the Uland Softball Complex that's brought in by a different vendor. I think it should stay more, not to call them not local, but smaller businesses should have more of a right than the larger ones that were, in my understanding, they were set up to be special events. The Ralph and the Alerus, their licenses was set up specifically not to compete with us.
I guess,
Mr. Weigel.
to me, it almost, if they're putting, I don't foresee it competing with current events, like some of the things that you mentioned. I see this as new events that are coming into the community. They're putting in, like Mr. Hodgson said last week when he was here, anywhere up to $500,000 at times for these events. They're putting their own money to bring the events here. They should be able to sell the beverages and the popcorn and the parking and everything else. I think if they're bringing it in, they should have that right to do so. And I don't foresee this being an issue.
Thank you. Any further comments? Ms. Mott?
I guess, I don't know if we have a representative from REA here, but it would be interesting to see what they would think of that limitation. I don't know if, I'm not sure what venue spaces they were necessarily looking at getting into. I know they had mentioned the Fritz or the Empire, but I don't know if there are others that, you know, they have in mind. So I guess I would be interested in maybe hearing from them as opposed to just putting it as a restriction without any thoughts from them.
Ms. Dockler?
In the same vein as Ms. Mock, it would be interesting to hear the Alaris on this as well, because I feel like they have been largely void or not here in that conversation, and I know it's a city entity, and so here we are as a city, but it would be nice to see somebody who is in that position come forward and talk about it and how it would affect them and what their thoughts on it. And then also, by limiting this ordinance to just include those spaces that Ms. Marshall had mentioned, I don't see it as being limiting on their business necessarily, because we're giving them the opportunity to expand out and use a little bit more than what they had before. It's just taking a measured look at how it's going to be implemented, because my current understanding kind of consideration, it would all be taken, or it would all be done administratively, which is fine. I trust our staff. I think they're smarter than I am about a lot of these things. But at the same time, I think it does leave us open. What would stop them from approaching the Grand Forks City Park District and saying, we would like to have, you know, a week-long concert series at University Park, and then also provide alcohol ourselves. That wouldn't come back the way that this is currently written to the council. That would stay within the judgment of city administration and also of the REA themselves to decide whether or not that was a good event. Certainly the Park District would have a say in whether or not they would do that, but, you know, why are we proverbially passing the buck on to somebody else to make that decision when we know what our answer would be?
Thank you, Mr. Field.
Mayor Brown, members of the City Council. Anna's not here. She's, I'm sure, getting ready for the Cheap Trick concert. But Mr. Vian's also on the board too. But I think the stance of both Spectra on behalf and on behalf of Spectra, our management company, and also the commission was in favor of moving forward to provide them additional opportunities. And they mentioned 3 facilities, that 2 of which already been named: the Chester Fritz, the Empire Arts Center, and Town Square, or some other downtown outdoor venue where they could see themselves hosting events and trying to do those things. But they've already done, the Alaris has already done, I think they did Foreigner and Chester Fritz. They sponsored that, and so I think they see that as an opportunity beyond what they're already doing as we move forward. So I think the only item, I think Ms. Marshall mentioned Chester Fritz, she mentioned the Empire Arts Center. The only other thing I've ever heard is a downtown outdoor venue where they could see driving people to that. And I don't know if Mr. Palmosino wants to be called upon, but I know he's responsible for the Icon Center, and so I don't know if he has any input, but if you wanted to ask him, I suspect he'd come up and answer any questions.
You've been invited to the podium. Welcome, Mr. Palmosino.
I'm here to support the Public Art Commission, but when I did talk to the Ralph, it was mainly for events like the 18 and under World Juniors, where they rented the Icon facility to serve there. We don't have any intentions of opening bars during kids' games or any of that activities. And Mr. Swanson might have to answer this question, but most of our events that we do get a vendor that wants to serve alcohol in our parks, we ask that they get their license transferred to include the park. And I don't know if that comes back to the city or not, but we don't just okay it. We make them, and we also, if they're going to do any events on our property, that they get to write off from the Grand Forks Police Department, because they're usually involved in that event. So,
Mr. Swanson, comments?
Mayor Brown, members of council, in that situation, we require the vendor to file a Class 11 application and along with that, they have to provide us with proof that the park district has approved.
Okay.
So without that, it's a non-starter.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Okay.
Just a couple comments. Mr. Phelan just talked a little bit about the Alara Center. The interesting thing about Alara Center is that they can stage their facility for most any size of event that comes in, so they're more flexible, we'll say, and I think the biggest issue was who would be willing to take on the risk, and they understood that issue of risk, and there's not very many people that can afford to take on the risk, but probably the exception of these two, Alara Center or the Engelstead. My initial concern with this was, of course, the original ordinance was written to, exclude them from doing exactly what they're requesting here now. But I think we've seen some benefit or advantage to bringing some events in that would not otherwise be here with this ordinance, because it's one of the ways they can manage their risks better. And so I think there's value to it. I was concerned about some of the other liquor establishments. Were we creating unfair competition? And what I'm hearing here tonight, at least we had one owner here to talk about this, that with those two locations, they probably don't see an issue with it. So I kind of like the amendment that you proposed, and if that doesn't work or there's more that's needed, I'm sure we can come back and add that in. But those two are specifically outlined as ones that I think it makes sense to maybe have somebody like either of those two establishments take on should they need to. Mr. Swanson.
Mayor Brown, members of council, I just want to amplify one comment Mr. Phelan made. The Alara Center did promote the event at the Chester Fritz, but they did not provide the alcohol service at that event. That was sponsored by or provided by a Class 11 license. So Alara has not moved off their premises, nor has the RA moved off their premises for service of alcohol prior to this request.
Thank you, Ms. Marshall.
And I would just like to echo the comment that if we start out small and limit it to certain events or certain event venues, if there's need in the future to change the ordinance again to add additional venues, we always have that opportunity to do that. And I think Mr. Beam is absolutely correct on that. So in the effort to try to find a compromise position, this is what I would offer as a compromise that would address some of the concerns we've talked about already and allow us the opportunity to add to that rather than take away. We all know that taking away later is a whole lot harder than adding to. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Weber.
This might seem contradictory because I've frequently voted in favor of alcohol and adult events in town, but I'm concerned about, there's one example that I've heard each time now, the 17 and under hockey tournament. The idea of working to make alcohol available at what should be a youth sporting event is concerning to me. I know we had a study presented to us, maybe that was a year or two ago now, and it was quite alarming, the amount of alcohol use at youth sporting events already in our community. I know that according to a North Dakota Community Readiness Survey, 70% of respondents indicate that alcohol abuse in our community among youth is a serious or moderate problem, 70% saying that. So I was wondering, Mr. Vasicek, I see you here. Were you here to speak on this matter at all? Do you have anything to add?
Not tonight.
Not tonight. Not tonight. Very good. Well, I've seconded the motion, and I'm ready to move.
Roll call vote.
Can we repeat the motion?
Can we please repeat the motion?
Do you want to repeat? What I have written down then is to amend the current motion as proposed in the staff report to limit the locations to the Empire and the Chester Fritz.
That's correct.
So a motion before us, roll call vote.
Weigel.
Nay.
Doppler.
Yes.
Weber.
Aye.
Mock.
Yes.
Marshall.
Yes.
And Veen.
Yes. Motion
Passes.
carries. We have a motion to amend, now we need a motion as amended. So Mr. Vian, motions, Ms. Marshall seconds. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries, Mr. Weigel dissents. Next, we go to 4.4.
Public Works Commission, public art agreement for the Northern Rose sculpture.
Mr. Gangler.
Mayor Brown, members of the council, staff will be asking that this item be tabled until July 1st. I'll give you a little bit of an update. Coming out of the committee of the whole, staff was directed to continue to work on the agreement and to get some of those details worked out. We have made some of those efforts to move forward. As Mr. Palmasino indicated, that the Park District is in support of the PAC activities. Late this afternoon, we did receive a letter from them indicating that they would agree to perform the maintenance requirements of the sculpture, not the sculpture itself, but of the landscaped area that's to be designed around it. We've also had verbal commitment from the Can-Ad Inn as late as Friday afternoon that if in fact a few parking stalls have to be taken out in order to provide room for the foundation, so far on Friday they did give a verbal commitment that they would go along with that. So those are things that we still need to shore up in terms of the agreement or a parallel agreement that achieves the same thing. So with that, we're still waiting for some other additional information to come forward so we can complete the final draft with the intent of submitting it for the July 1st City Council meeting. So staff does recommend tabling until July 1st.
Thank you. Questions or comments from council? Mr. Vian?
Mr. Gagler, there was going to be two agreements, right? Kind of the umbrella agreement and then the specific one for this location. They're both going in parallel or not?
Well, as we talked about coming out of last month, of the two documents, the site-specific agreement we think is the most critical. Then we have the memorandum of understanding that was originally drafted in 2014. So we think the memorandum of understanding should still move forward. However, in terms of a final document, I wouldn't anticipate on having that agreement, the memorandum, for July 1st, but we think the time-sensitive issue of the current sculpture project at hand, we think that the agreement itself should be up for final on the 1st. Again, with efforts to continue working on the overall memorandum.
Thank you.
Do you have any idea what type of timeline you would think of for the MOU?
Well, in speaking with Mr. Swanson on it, there was a lot of things stated in that memorandum that have since changed in terms of, there's been different council members, different things of what were agreed to or at least stated. So I would hope that, within a month's time or depending on, how long it takes to get that document back into good working order. So I can't give you a definite date, but sooner rather than later.
So, yeah, so you're not talking about another 2 years or years to get it done?
I would not be talking about that.
Thank you. So now council comments. So Mr. Weber has a motion to table. Second, Ms. Mock. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? And that's to July 1st, correct? Thank you, Mr. Gagler. Next, we go to 4.8.
Clean Water State Revolving Fund Loan Application, Project 8067.
Ms. Parvey, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. We asked to pull this agenda item tonight because we didn't bring it before you last week in front of the Committee of the Whole. The reason we're bringing this before you is we're asking for approval to authorize the City Administrator to make the application and execute necessary documents to request Clean Water State Revolving Loan Funds in the amount of $1.4 million. It's for a number of projects that we've identified this year that we still need to accomplish at the wastewater treatment plant. These are improvements to the chemical room, MBF recycle pump, header piping, and then the bypass piping. The chemical room improvements we need to make are to the polymer system. It's an older system. It's been that way since 2003 when the plant was built, and we need some redundancy in order to support the polymer to feed the UV disinfection system. And then we need to add a sodium hydroxide storage system and add that to address the alkalinity that's in the wastewater. That's a lot of the industrial waste that we receive that we're having to treat. Two of those industrial users really are Simplot and Red River Biorefinery, what we expect to receive from them later on this year. So it's a little bit of preparation to receive their wastewater. The MBF recycle pump piping, we noticed that when the UV disinfection system started up, that the header system was undersized, and so we have to increase the pipe and the fittings to avoid the air entrapment that we were dealing with in that project. And then the last one is the bypass piping. There's some corrosion in that bypass pipe. We don't know the extent of it because of where it's located. We can't get to look at it. We have to televise it to see what the extent is, and then line it with the appropriate liner so that it's corrosion resistant. So those are the projects that we've identified that we still unfortunately need to do yet this year, if we can get your authorization to do so.
Thank you. Council comments, questions? Motion, Mr. Weber. Second, Ms. Mock. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Thank you. I need introduction to ordinance on 4.3, 4.9, 4.16, and 4.17. Mr. Vian, thank you. Next, we go to item 5, informational items, 5.1.
Investment portfolio summary as of May 31st.
Item 6, citizen request. I have none. Item 7, approval of the minutes and bills, 7.1.
The vendor list as presented.
Need a motion to pay the bills, Ms. Marshall. Second, Mr. Vian. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? The bills are paid. 7.2.
The minutes from March 4th.
Any corrections or changes? Mr. Weber motions. Second, Mr. Weigel. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Carries. Thank you. Item 8, city administrator comments. Mr. Phelan.
Mayor Brown and members of City Council, we have a tentative date, as long as it will generally work for us, for a joint school City Council meeting, and that date is August 12th. I have followed up with Dr. Brenner. It would be a committee of the whole night that evening, and so presumably we'd have a quick committee of the whole and maybe a 6 o'clock joint meeting. And it's still this relatively the same agenda of discussing growth development between the city and the school district, and hearing about kind of what we're doing from a planning and growth development. What are they planning as part of their infrastructure master planning? And then probably just some updates on joint efforts that we're working together, whether that's welcoming, whether that's some of the addiction behavioral health, and then finally some of the cops in schools, and maybe any other updates you'd like to have. But basically those things that we're working together and while we have everyone together. So tentatively, that's what we're shooting for. And I think importantly is on that August 12th date, I did have a conversation as I was conversing with Dr. Brenner. They are going to have a demographer come, I think in the July timeframe, to brief the city school board regarding kind of where the students are, where the growth is. And I think that would be informative for both boards to hear that in August. We get wrapped up in land use planning and all this. We don't do a lot of demography. Sorry, Brad, I can't get my words out. But I think that would be informative. We kind of get locked in our own silo here, and it would be a way for us to kind of share kind of where we're going, and so that we don't end up in places we're not quite communicating. So that's kind of the sense. If you have any questions, concerns, or added things you'd like on, if I don't hear anything, any pushback, we'll continue to move forward. They would like to have it here at City Council. We'd set it up in a work session fashion, and they thought it would be better to have it here, more space, and we could televise it also. It would be after and we would try to keep it light so that we would be done by 6, and then we'd go into that joint meeting. And more details to come, but I wanted to give you a heads up, and I'll send you some more email, but I want to give you a heads up right now.
Thank you. Next, we go to Councilman Weigel.
Nothing here.
Councilwoman Dockler. Councilman Weber.
I'll try to keep it really short, but we can't talk about everybody that was recognized tonight, but Ms. Parvey has presented a couple times. Quick story, I was cleaning out my garage and found an old newspaper clipping from the battles over the dog park. And Ms. Parvey was featured prominently in that article because she was instrumental in that and so much of the work with the Greenway. It was quite amusing, the concerns people had about all of the barking and the noise and the dangers that the dog park was going to present. And now it has been such a fantastic part of the Greenway, so popular, and so nice work all along, Ms. Parvey.
I get more positive comments about the dog park than anything else. we've done in 19 years. So Councilwoman Mock?
I can't top that.
Okay. Councilwoman Marshall?
Neither can I.
Mr. Vian?
I would just like to say, well, speaking Ms. Parvey, the tour we got to have of the water treatment plant on last week, was able to go out and do that, and the engineer and the construction manager and staff were all there. It's moving along really well. So imagine, it's been under construction for a couple of years now, 2.5 years or so, and another year to go, but amazing structure, and hope everybody gets a chance to go out and take a look at it. Thanks.
Yes. And again, congratulations to Tiffany Bluespug for being recognized as the Public Health Worker of the Year by the North Dakota Public Health Association. And then, again, thank you to everyone who worked with the Refugee Day, Cynthia Shab, Robin David, Reggie Tarr, the Downtown Development Association. Cheap Trick is tonight. Farmers Market, we encourage everyone to attend. And then also, thank you to the Public Works people for their yard waste recycling. They do a tremendous job. And again, congratulations to Melanie Parvey, 20 years, Darren Johnson, 15 years, Stacy Furden, 15 years, Tim Ward, 5 years, Rick Hychek, 5 years, Doug Stern, 30 years, Nicole Chervais, 20 years, Delray Hewitt, 15 years, Jennifer Wolf Karras, 5 years, Heidi Hildebrand, 5 years, Miranda Olson, 5 years. And with that, we take the motion to adjourn. Ms. Marshall quickly motions. Ms. Dockler quickly seconds. All in favor say aye. Opposed, we stand adjourned. Thank you.
Also, yes, this is my phone. Well, I was wondering. Yes.
Thank you for being with us tonight. This meeting has been brought to you in part by
Let Grand Forks International Airport help you start your next vacation off on the right foot. Grand Forks International Airport offers flights to the sunny destinations of Orlando, Las Vegas, and Phoenix on Allegiant, and connections anywhere in the world through Minneapolis-St. Paul on Delta. Forget the hassle of long drives, parking nightmares, and stressful check-ins. The convenience of flying locally means less headaches and more time for you. Grand Forks International Airport, your airport, simply grand.
How many things in your house connect to the internet? Let's see. Computers, smartphones, gaming console, maybe your appliances and lights. They say that by the year 2020, the average home will have 5 devices for every one person. I don't know about you guys, but I don't want to be average. We're going to need much better internet.
Midco Extreme Gig is here. Life-changing.
Know what's in this box? Well, in case your crystal ball is broken, here's a hint. Safe, reliable energy, for starters, but there's also a commitment to this community. See, at Xcel Energy, this is our hometown. So we're not just about making a living here, we're about living here. Oh, I wish I had wings.
In our community, we're always delivering. Xcel Energy, responsible by nature.
As a farm kid from North Dakota, I was raised to face challenges head-on. But that was put to the test when I was diagnosed with cancer as a teenager. Now, I'm determined to help kids overcome illnesses like I did. So I started my journey at the University of North Dakota. With hard work and determination, I'll help others like my doctors helped me. I'm making my impact. How will you make yours?